If your hair is growing, but never seems to get longer, if your ends keep snapping, if your strands feel weak, stretchy, thin, or fragile, no matter what conditioner, serum, or oil you use, there is a very good chance you are focusing on the wrong thing. Because the real issue may not be on top of your head, it may be on your plate. And one of the biggest missing nutrients behind weak, breakable hair is something almost nobody talks about in a practical way: sulfur. Now, I know that doesn't sound glamorous. It doesn't sound trendy. It's not one of those flashy ingredients that gets marketed in a shiny bottle with words like repair complex or liquid silk technology. But if you want hair that is not just growing, but actually staying attached, staying thick, staying strong, and resisting breakage long enough to hold real length, sulfur is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle, because sulfur helps your body build the actual architecture of your hair. And once you understand how that works, it changes the way you look at hair growth forever. Most people think hair health is mostly about moisture. They think if their hair feels dry, the answer is more oil. If it feels rough, the answer is a mask. If it is breaking, the answer is trimming it, switching shampoos, or trying another leave-in product. And yes, surface care matters. I'm not saying it doesn't, but a lot of people are trying to fix a structural problem with a cosmetic solution. That's like trying to paint over a cracked bridge and hoping it becomes stronger. The outside can only do so much if the inside of the strand is weak. And this is exactly what happens when your body is not getting enough of the raw materials needed to create strong keratin. Your hair is made primarily of keratin. Keratin is a tough structural protein. It is what gives your hair its framework, its integrity, its resilience, and its ability to tolerate stress without snapping apart. But keratin is not just one smooth piece of protein. It has to be built and stabilized in a very specific way. And one of the key things that gives keratin its strength is sulfur. More specifically, sulfur helps create what are called disulfide bonds. These are tiny sulfur-based bridges that connect parts of the keratin structure together. Think of them like the steel bolts in a suspension bridge. Without those bolts, the structure might still exist, but it will not be strong under pressure. It will bend too much, weaken too easily, and eventually fail. That is what weak hair does. It might look okay when you first style it. It might even seem soft, but once it gets wet, brushed, tied up, heated, pulled, or exposed to sun, friction, or chemicals, it starts to reveal the truth. The truth is in the breakage. The truth is in the split ends. The truth is in the little snapped hairs all over your sink, your brush, your floor, and your pillow. The truth is in the way your hair seems to stop at the same length year after year. And that is where a lot of people get confused. They think they have a hair growth problem, but many times they actually have a hair retention problem. Their hair is growing from the root, but it is breaking off from the ends at almost the same speed. So it never looks longer. And when you understand that, your whole strategy has to change. Because now the question is not just, how do I make my hair grow? The better question is, how do I make the strand strong enough to survive? That is a very different conversation. And that is where sulfur-rich superfoods, become incredibly important. Now let's go a little deeper, because this is where the science starts to become practical. Your body uses sulfur-containing amino acids, especially methionine and cysteine, to help build keratin. These amino acids are not just random nutrients floating around. They are part of the literal construction materials for hair. Cysteine, in particular, plays a huge role in the formation of disulfide bonds. These bonds help determine strength, shape, and durability of the hair shaft. So if your diet is low in sulfur-rich proteins or sulfur-containing foods, your body may still produce hair, but the quality of that hair may not be as strong as it could be. That means weaker strands, less resilience, more snapping, and less retained length over time. And here is the part that surprises a lot of people. You can be eating healthy and still be low in the specific nutrients your hair needs. This happens all the time. People are drinking fruit smoothies, eating oatmeal, having granola bars, salads, yogurt, rice cakes, low-fat wraps, and snack foods labeled as healthy. But when you really look at what they are eating, it is often low in complete protein, low in sulfur amino acids, low in minerals, low in fat-soluble nutrients, and very weak when it comes to the actual building blocks of strong hair. This is why someone can be clean eating and still have hair that feels weak, thin, brittle, or impossible to grow long, because your hair does not care about labels. It cares about raw materials. It cares about whether your body has what it needs to manufacture strong keratin, support healthy follicles, regulate inflammation, and protect the hair shaft from structural collapse. That is the real game. So let's talk about the foods that can actually help. And the first one on the list is eggs. Eggs are one of the best foods you can eat for hair. And honestly, they are still underrated. An egg is like a little nutrient package for tissue growth and repair. It contains high-quality protein, sulfur-containing amino acids, biotin, choline, selenium, B vitamins, and fat-soluble nutrients that support the scalp and follicle environment. And for hair specifically, eggs provide some of the exact amino acids needed to support keratin production. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of focusing only on egg whites because they think the yolk is the unhealthy part. That is outdated thinking. The yolk is where a lot of the nutritional value lives. That yolk contains key nutrients involved in tissue repair, cellular function, and nutrient transport. So if you are throwing away the yolk and keeping only the whites, you are often throwing away the part that helps your body the most. And remember, hair is not just protein. It is protein supported by nutrients. You need the whole package. If you tolerate eggs well, having them consistently can be one of the simplest ways to support stronger hair from the inside out. And consistency is what matters here. Hair does not respond to random effort. It responds to repeated nourishment. The second major group of sulfur-rich foods is the allium family. This includes garlic, onions, leeks, shallots, scallions, and chives. Now, most people think of these as flavor boosters. They think of them as kitchen basics, but these are not just cooking ingredients. These are therapeutic foods. Garlic and onions are rich in sulfur compounds that support multiple systems in the body. They help with detoxification, circulation, immune support, and tissue resilience. And all of those things matter when it comes to hair, because your scalp is not isolated from the rest of your body. Your follicles are not living in a vacuum. If your circulation is poor, if your inflammation is high, if your detox pathways are overloaded, if your mineral status is off, your hair will often show it. And one of the quiet signs of imbalance is weak, dull, fragile hair that loses shine, texture, and strength. Garlic in particular has been used traditionally in many cultures for hair and scalp health. And while people often focus on topical uses, the internal use is where the real long-term support comes from. When you regularly include onions, garlic, and similar sulfur-rich foods in your meals, you are helping build a more supportive internal environment for hair formation. That matters a lot more than most people realize. Now let's move into one of the most powerful categories for hair support, and that is cruciferous vegetables. This is a huge one. We are talking about broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, bok choy, collard greens, turnips, radishes, mustard greens, arugula. These vegetables are loaded with sulfur compounds and other protective plant chemicals that support hormone balance, detoxification, antioxidant defenses, and cellular repair. And if your hair has been thinning, shedding more than usual, or becoming weaker over time, this category becomes extremely important because hair health is not just about structure. It is also about the internal environment in which that structure is being created. If your hormones, unstable, if your liver is sluggish, if your inflammatory load is high, your follicles can become stressed. And stressed follicles do not usually produce the best hair. Cruciferous vegetables help support phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification pathways in the liver, which is a fancy way of saying they help your body process and clear things more efficiently. That includes excess hormones and metabolic waste that contribute to internal imbalance. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not saying broccoli is a magic hair cure, but I am saying that if your body is overloaded, undernourished, inflamed, and hormonally imbalanced, your hair will often reflect that. And cruciferous vegetables help clean up some of the background chaos that gives your body a better chance to build healthier tissue. And yes, that includes stronger hair. So if you want better hair, start respecting foods like cabbage and broccoli a lot more, because they are doing work behind the scenes that your conditioner cannot do. Now let's talk about one of the biggest heavy hitters for hair structure, and that is meat, especially red meat. This is where some people get uncomfortable, but biologically speaking, red meat is one of the most efficient foods for delivering the nutrients your hair depends on. Beef provides complete protein, sulfur amino acids, zinc, iron, vitamin B12, and highly bioavailable nutrients that are incredibly important for follicle function and tissue repair. And if your hair is thinning, shedding excessively, or breaking easily, one of the first things I think about is whether you are low in iron, low in zinc, or under-consuming high-quality protein. Because these deficiencies are extremely common especially in people who eat lightly, skip meals, avoid red meat, or rely too heavily on processed convenience foods. Zinc is critical for tissue repair, follic, recycling, and protein synthesis. Iron is crucial for oxygen delivery to tissues, including the hair follicle. And if your follicles are not getting what they need, they often start producing weaker, thinner hair over time. That can show up as increased shedding, reduced density, less shine, and hair that just does not feel alive anymore. And here is something important. Even if you are technically eating enough protein on paper, if it is low quality protein or if your digestion is poor, you may not be getting the full benefit. This is why bioavailability matters. The body tends to absorb and use nutrients from animal foods more efficiently in many cases, especially when it comes to amino acids, iron, B12, and zinc. That is not ideology. That is physiology. Now, if you choose not to eat meat, that is your choice. But you need to be more intentional if you are trying to support hair strength without it, because hair is a low priority tissue. Your body will take care of your brain, your heart, your liver, and your essential systems first. Hair gets what is left over. So if your nutrient reserves are not strong, your hair often pays the price. Now, let's take that a step further and talk about organ meats, especially liver. I know this is not everyone's favorite topic. Liver is not exactly the darling of modern social media wellness culture, but nutritionally, it is one of the most dense foods on the planet. Liver contains vitamin A, B12, folate, iron, copper, and a wide range of nutrients involved in cellular repair and tissue regeneration. And while liver is not specifically famous for sulfur alone, it supports the broader nutrient network needed for healthy follicles and strong hair formation, because sulfur does not work in isolation. Your hair does not just need one nutrient. It needs a coordinated team. It needs a coordinated team, antioxidants, healthy fats, circulation, hormonal stability, and proper digestion. This is why hair health is such a useful mirror. It reflects how well your whole system is functioning, not perfectly, but often more honestly than people expect. Now, let's move into seafood, because this is another powerful category. Fish like sardines, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, and even shellfish can be incredibly supportive for hair. Why? Because they provide protein, trace minerals, selenium, iodine in some cases, B vitamins, and anti-inflammatory omega-30 fats, and omega-3s are a big deal when it comes to scalp health. A lot of people are trying to grow hair in an inflammatory environment. Their scalp is irritated, oily, flaky, reactive, or just chronically stressed. And if the scalp environment is not healthy, hair quality often suffers. The follicle is a living structure. It responds to inflammation, nutrient status, blood flow, and hormonal signals. So if you are eating in a way that constantly drives inflammation, your hair often becomes more fragile over time. Three fats help support membrane health, reduce inflammatory burden, and create a more stable environment for hair and skin. This is one reason sardines are such an underrated superfood. They are small, nutrient dense, rich in protein, high in omega-3s, and they also provide minerals that many people are missing. If you are serious about improving hair quality, foods like sardines and salmon deserve a regular place in your week. Now, let's talk about dairy for a moment, because this one is a little more individual. Certain dairy foods, especially yogurt, kefir, and some cheeses, can provide sulfur-containing amino acids and protein. But dairy can be a mixed bag. For some people, it is well tolerated and supportive. For others, it can worsen congestion, inflammation, scalp oiliness, or skin issues. So this one depends on your body. The key is not to follow a trend. The key is to pay attention. If a food leaves you bloated, inflamed, congested, or reactive, it may not be helping your hair, even if it looks healthy on paper. Hair thrives when your body is in a state of good adaptation, not just when you are eating foods from a list. Now, let's move into plant-based sulfur sources, because there are some useful ones here too. Legumes like lentils, chickpeas, black beans, and split peas can contribute protein, minerals, and some sulfur-containing amino acids. Seeds like sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, hemp seeds, and pumpkin seeds also bring in supportive nutrients for hair, including zinc, copper, vitamin E, and protein. Now here is the honest truth. These foods can absolutely help, but if you are relying on them as your primary protein source, you need to be strategic, because the amino acid profile is often less complete, and the absorption of certain minerals can be reduced by compounds like phytates unless the foods are prepared well. That does not mean they are bad. It just means they are not a perfect substitute in every context. So if you are mostly plant-based and your hair is thinning, weak, or not holding length, you really want to take a close look at total protein, sulfur, amino acids, zinc, iron, B12, and even your calorie intake, because undereating is a very common hidden cause of poor hair quality. A lot of people are not just low in one nutrient. They are underfueled overall, and hair notices. If your body feels like it is in a constant state of scarcity, it will not prioritize luxurious, thick, resilient hair. It will prioritize survival. That is just basic biology. Now, there is another major issue we need to talk about, and that is digestion. Because you can eat the right foods and still not build strong hair if you digest. Ion is not doing its job. This is a huge blind spot. People focus on what they eat, but they do not focus on whether they are actually digesting, absorbing, and assimilating it. And that matters just as much. If your stomach acid is low, if your digestive enzymes are weak, if your gallbladder is sluggish, if your gut is inflamed, if you are constantly bloated or constipated, you may not be extracting nutrients efficiently. And if you are not extracting nutrients efficiently, your hair may stay weak even on a good diet. This is why some people say, I eat healthy, but my hair is still falling apart. Well, maybe your body is not actually accessing what you are eating. Protein digestion is especially important here, because if you cannot break protein down well, you may not be liberating the amino acids your body needs for keratin synthesis. That means even if you are eating eggs, fish, meat, or legumes, you may not be getting the full structural benefit. So if you feel overly full after protein, if meat just sits in your stomach, if you burp a lot after meals, if you feel bloated or sluggish after eating, that is worth paying attention to. Because digestion is not a side issue. Digestion is the gateway. Hair starts in the follicle, yes, but nutritionally, it starts in the gut. Now let's talk about one of the biggest enemies of strong hair, and that is excess sugar. This is a huge problem, and most people underestimate it. When your diet is high in sugar and refined carbohydrates, you create more blood sugar instability, more inflammation, and more oxidative stress. And one of the lesser known consequences is something called glycation. Glycation is a process where excess sugar binds to proteins and damages them. This can affect collagen, elastin, skin quality, and potentially the integrity of tissues throughout the body. Now, hair is not just direct, lie destroyed by sugar in a dramatic way. But when your internal chemistry is dominated by insulin, spikes, inflammation, and oxidative damage, it creates a poor environment for healthy hair. And over time, that can show up as more shedding, dullness, weaker strands, and slower recovery. So if you are eating sulfur-rich foods, but also consuming soda, candy, pastries, sweetened coffee drinks, breakfast cereal, processed snack bars, and constant refined carbs, you are working against your own hair goals. You cannot out-supplement a bad metabolic environment. Hair loves stability, stable blood sugar, stable hormones, stable nourishment, stable routines. That is when it starts to thrive. Now let's connect sulfur to another major piece of the puzzle, and that is stress. Because stress can absolutely affect hair, and not just emotionally. Physiologically, when stress is chronic, your body diverts resources away from non-essential functions and towards survival functions. This can disrupt digestion, increase inflammation, alter blood sugar, change hormone patterns, reduce sleep quality, and impair nutrient absorption. And guess what? All of that impacts hair. So if you are eating well but sleeping badly, if you are stressed all the time, if you are over-caffeinated, under-rested, and constantly running on adrenaline, your hair often reflects that. It may feel drier, thinner, more fragile, or start shedding more heavily. Because hair needs a body that feels safe enough to invest in growth and maintenance. This is why hair is such an honest tissue. It responds to the full context of your health, not just one nutrient, not just one product, not just one habit. The full picture matters. Now let's talk about what sulfur deficiency or low sulfur intake can actually look like in real life. It may not always show up as some dramatic, obvious medical condition. Sometimes it shows up subtly. Your hair might feel softer than normal, but in a weak way. It may stretch too much when wet. It may tangle easily. It may break when you brush it. Your ends may look thin, transparent, or uneven. You may notice more split ends than usual. Your hair may seem like it is growing, but not retaining. And sometimes your nails can give you clues too. If your nails are brittle, peeling, or weak, that can also hint at structural support issues in the body. Because hair and nails both depend on protein integrity and nutrient sufficiency. Now, here is another important point. Topical products can temporarily improve how your hair feels, but they do not replace internal structure. Siliconas can make weak hair feel smoother. Conditioners can reduce friction. Protein treatments can patch damage for a while. And some of these tools are useful. But if your body is not building strong hair from the root, topical support will always be limited. You cannot moisturize your way out of a structural deficiency. You have to build the strand better in the first place. That is the difference. Now, if you want to practically use this information, the best thing you can do is start building meals around hair structure instead of just taste, convenience, or random diet trends. Ask yourself a better question. Instead of, is this low calorie? Ask, does this meal help me build strong tissue? Instead of, what snack is healthy? Ask, what nutrients is my hair actually getting from this? That shift changes everything, because once you start seeing food as information and building material, your choices become much more strategic. A strong, hair-supported breakfast could be eggs cooked with onions, garlic, and spinach, maybe with some avocado on the side. A solid lunch could be beef or lentils with cabbage, broccoli, or kale, a powerful dye. Niner could be salmon with roasted Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. A snack could be pumpkin seeds, yogurt, if tolerated, sardines, or even leftovers from a real meal instead of ultra-processed snack foods. This is how you start feeding the strand before it even exists. And that is the smartest way to approach hair. Because once the strand has already grown out weak, your options are limited. You can protect it, you can coat it, you can reduce damage, but you cannot fully rebuild the part that is already formed. The best strategy is to improve what comes next. And that takes patience. Hair is slow. This is one of the hardest parts for people to accept. You can change your diet this week and still not see dramatic, visible changes for a while. That does not mean it is not working. Hair has a timeline. What you do now shows up later. So if you stay consistent with sulfur-rich foods, better protein intake, improved digestion, lower sugar, better sleep, and reduced inflammation, the first changes you may notice are not always dramatic growth. Sometimes the first change is less breakage. Then the ends start feeling thicker. Then the shine improves. Then the brush has less hair in it. Then the ponytail starts feeling fuller. Then after enough time, you suddenly realize your hair is actually holding length in a way it never used to. That is how real hair improvement often happens. Quietly, gradually, structurally. And that is exactly what you want, because fast cosmetic fixes usually do not last. But when the strand is built better from the inside, the results tend to be more durable. Now I want to leave you with one of the most important mindset shifts when it comes to hair. Stop asking only, what can I put on my hair? And start asking, what is my body using to build my hair? That is the smarter question, because your body is manufacturing. Because your body is manufacturing your hair every single day, and it can only manufacture it out of what you consistently provide. If you are constantly low in sulfur-rich proteins, low in minerals, high in sugar, stressed, and digesting poorly, your hair is going to reflect that no matter how expensive your products are. But if you start feeding your body the right building blocks, especially sulfur-rich superfoods, you give your hair a much better chance to become what it was designed to be: stronger, thicker, more resilient, less prone to snapping, more capable of retaining length, and ultimately more unbreakable. Because real hair length is not just about how fast your hair grows. It is about whether your keratin bridges are strong enough to hold that length together. And sulfur is one of the keys that helps make that happen. So if you have been stuck in the cycle of weak ends, constant trims, breakage, and frustration, breakage, and frustration, this is your sign to stop chasing only external solutions. Start building your hair from the inside. Feed the strand before it forms. Support the bridges that hold it together. And give your body the raw materials it needs to create hair that does not just grow. Hair that lasts,